Most GMs have their trade secrets to make it seem like they have it all together. Hacks that make them seem like much better GMs than they actually are. I asked all of you in our Discord server to share your best GM hacks so that way I could share it with everybody else in a video, and man, did you guys deliver. I'm super excited to dive into your responses. If you missed out on this time and you want to maybe appear in the next video, join the Discord server, links down in the description below, and maybe your response will get picked for the next one. Welcome to the Tabletop Empire. My name is Nate, and today we're going to be searching for the ultimate GM hacks for Star Wars RPG. So this video idea actually was inspired by something one of the people on the Discord server had said, and I thought about it and I was like, man, that's a really good tip for running this game. I should do a whole video on this subject. AsYourGM shared a really cool trick that I 100% plan on using myself in my own campaigns at home. And his hack was this. I do hidden obligation rolls, so I secretly roll at the end of the previous session, prep the player's encounter, and then mime a fake roll at the start of the next session to make it appear as though I improvised everything. Now, I know for me personally, I am pretty terrible about coming up with obligation on the spot when I roll it at the beginning of the session and then trying to find some way to incorporate it into the session, so this tip really spoke to me personally. I'm 100% planning on rolling my obligation at the end of the session, planning out how that actually plays out into the next session, and then arriving at the next session already knowing exactly how obligation is going to look like going into this. AsYourGM has a YouTube channel, by the way. Go subscribe to his channel. I'll put a link down in the description below, especially if you plan on using this trick yourself. As for the rest of the responses, I haven't really read them yet, so this is going to be my genuine reaction and my thoughts relating to some of them. And then I'm going to cut out the best ones, and those will be the ones that are in the actual video. The Dadalorian says, one of the common things I run into while running a tabletop RPG are social encounters. Way too often I experience players and the GM relying on dice rolls for social encounters. GMs, become the NPC. Put yourself into the shoes of the NPC. Actually interact with your players. This will alleviate the need for mistimed, awkward, and clunky dice rolls for these social encounters. If your players can actually personally convince you to drop the price of an object during negotiation checks, then skip the dice rolls altogether. Remove the GM screen if you must to show that there isn't a barrier between you and the PCs. Now, I actually really like this tip. I wouldn't personally, I don't think, like completely remove something like a negotiation roll, but I definitely think that depending on how your players can go about with their responses, you can get around needing dice rolls. And if they do have some sort of thing that would require a negotiation check, depending on how well they negotiate, can make maybe the dice difficulty easier. My wife and I recently started playing Baldur's Gate 3, and one of the things I love is you can get through these dialogue conversations without ever needing to roll a skill check. However, those options are there if you decide to go down that route as the player. And so I think taking that kind of approach here is fantastic and should definitely be encouraged. GM Cactus says, whatever difficulty makes sense for me to adjudicate, make it 1 purple die lower and then add 1 or 2 setback dice. And when a player says, what if we do this or try this approach, I make my best effort to add a boost die or 2, or even reduce a setback or 2. This way the players are always proposing ideas and the early talents to reduce setback dice get used. This is great, especially if you don't always remember to actually use your boost die and setback dice. Again, take this approach as you need it most inside of your games, but this is definitely another tool that you can add to your tool belt. The Real Seth says, if I ever struggle to find an appropriate role for something my players want to do, or if I just want to liven it up a bit, I say, give me some flavor on how you're attempting to do this. This not only engages them for a bit more into the roleplay, but it also really helps get the wheels turning on what checks I need them to make. This is also dovetailed into the Dadalorian's hack and negated dice rolls entirely. This is kind of going back to what I said earlier. Depending on what your players' responses are to whatever they're trying to do, you can make dice rolls a lot easier, or maybe change what skill gets rolled for that specific thing, or even maybe altogether removing the dice roll entirely. The Greasy Bambino says, I make checklists for pre-session, post-session, and character plot threads I want to touch on in the game. I generally have bad organization, and we sometimes are stuck not playing for months on end. It's easy to forget basic things for me. Pre-session checklist includes game start rolls, so destiny, obligation, etc., and the reference sheets for NPCs, PC sheets, maps, etc. Post-session checklists includes rewards, conflict tallies, reminder of things to jot down or carry on to the next or future sessions, and the character thread checklist is a bit more broad. It generally depends on what I think is best for the session. I try to have at least one thing for each player so they get their time to shine. 100% this. I am awful at if I don't write stuff down, I will forget it. So for me, I kind of do the same thing. I have a pre-session checklist to make sure that I hit on everything that needs to happen. Having a post-session checklist, everything that I need to maybe remember at the start in the next session, as well as if you do, let's see, AsYourGM's obligation hack that we mentioned at the beginning of the video, you could put that with the post-session checklist. And then character thread checklist is something that I kind of do as well. I don't really organize my games writing down the whole story of everything that's going to happen. Typically I have a couple bullet points for kind of where I want the story to go, and then a couple character checklists that, okay, I want each character to have like one moment for them in this session, and this really honestly is fantastic. I would 100% recommend doing this if you are not good at remembering things in general. James says, I haven't used a screen in a long time. One trick I adapted from a friend of mine is to use pink and blue post-its, folded in half and then half again to make a little tent with character names on them, draped on the top of the screen to keep up with the initiative order. It helped keep track of when people's trade initiative slots. Yeah, if you don't play with any sort of screens, I would highly recommend figuring out tools that help you keep track of things and keep it clear for everybody. I have like a player info combat tracker sheet that you can download off my Discord that has a lot of this information, but if you want something visible for the players as well, then you can definitely do this. One thing I would maybe change is doing like PC versus NPC instead of doing like specific character names, but really you can run this however you want. And then we're gonna end this way with the way we began, with one more from AsYourGM. If you're bad at lying, like I am, but need some way to work threat into knowledge checks, add uncertainties instead of errors. So you get knowledge underworld with a bit of threat, and the player remembers that the hut demands a confection of some kind before he'll hold an audience with outsiders. But he supposedly really hates either pie or cake. Which was it? Do the players gamble by buying only one, or do they hedge their bets and buy both? Honestly, knowledge rolls are something that can be really kind of difficult to manage as a GM, especially if you're new to the system. And so this is just one of many examples of how you can maybe use knowledge that you maybe wouldn't have thought of before. And that's the last tip that we have today. I plan on doing more of these community input type videos in the future, so if you want to be involved in those, be sure to join the Discord. That's where all of this stuff is most likely going to be. A huge thanks to the Patreon supporters. Your support goes a very long way with helping this channel grow and continue to make videos. So thank you so much. And to everybody else, thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. But until then, and as always, may the force be with you. Also, hit like and subscribe.